Feel the heart. Experience the soul. Community Pulse.
Assalamu alaikum to you, Dr. Faiez, and I trust that you are well.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Zainab, I'm very well, shukran. Very well, thank you.
Excellent. Now, we've sort of touched on this in the last program that we did, the last few programs that we did, global health crisis. Perhaps we can just start off by recapping some of the things that we did manage to discuss.
If I recall, last week we spoke about the globalist agenda, and I think we touched on how it actually generates the global health crisis. Generates, I would say, all the crises around the world, really. And we really need to understand this agenda and what it's basically doing to people and the planet. Not just people, but also the planet. And not only people, but also other sentient beings, our animal friends also. So if you don't understand the root cause of anything, it's impossible to solve the problem that's being caused by that cause, okay? So what we're trying to do is solve problems and crises at the level of the consequence of the effect. That is completely useless. I mean, once a person has a headache and you just give them a headache pill, you're trying to solve that problem at the level of the consequence of the effect. The headache is just an effect of something that's caused it. So you got to go back and ask yourself, why did this person get a headache, for example? What actually caused the headache? And so same with the agenda, or with the crises, the global health crisis, what is actually causing it? Because it's been getting worse over the years.
Yeah.
And in fact, a study was done from 1990 to 2013. It was published in The Lancet about 2 years ago. And the study actually, it was actually the largest study of health trends around the world. And it showed that people are losing more years of healthy life to disease now than what they did back in the 1990s. So there's a 23-year study, and it actually showed that, in fact, more than 95% of the world's population actually has at least one health problem. But in fact, a third of them, which is 2.3 billion people, have 5 or more health conditions. So more than 95% of the world's people are actually sick or have some or other medical condition, which is a real indictment on the healthcare system and the people running it. And probably ourselves also, because we have actually allowed this to happen. So we really need to address these issues.
Absolutely. We not too long ago also spoke about cancer and how almost every other family has 1 or 2 people that suffers from cancer.
I think it's 50% of males and 30% of females, or the other way around. I always get confused with these figures. But a large percentage of people living today will get cancer. So that's not good. So
if we were to just try and connect the crisis with lifestyle, I think there's quite the link between why we are also in this health crisis.
Look, it has causes, but as I said, we've got to get back to the root cause, and mind is actually the fundamental root cause of most problems that we find in the world today. But lifestyle, environment, diet, chronic psychological stress, emotional issues. Humanity is actually traumatized. People are walking around with a lot of emotional trauma in their subconscious, and that's, reflected in the kind of behavior that they basically display every day, which includes their lifestyle. But the global health crisis has different aspects to it. Like there's an awareness crisis. That's key for me. I haven't come across courses where they talk about consciousness as one of the key aspects of the crisis, and really a lack of awareness or a lack of consciousness, which is really the issue. There's an information or a knowledge crisis. People just don't know enough. They don't have enough information that they can process in their minds to actually understand this crisis that's going on. And then there's a critical thinking crisis. People don't really think about, these things in a meaningful way. There's a massive cost crisis. We know how expensive it is to get sick today, okay? It's costing people thousands of rands every month just to pay for medical aid. And if they're not in medical aid, they still have to pay if they go to a public, if they can afford it, a public facility. There's a chronic diseases crisis. I mean, we spoke about cancer now, but there's many other chronic diseases. There's an access to healthcare services, crisis. I mean, I think the World Health Organization published a report a while ago which says that 400 million people don't have access to a doctor. I think that figure is probably much higher, but 400 million is more than enough people not being able to see a doctor or some other healthcare provider when they need those services. And then there's a remuneration crisis. Doctors and other healthcare providers are not really getting remunerated, adequately. Okay. So there's many aspects to this crisis, and each one obviously we can talk about individually if you want to.
You mentioned firstly that there's a crisis when it comes to information. People don't have enough information, and that's part of the reason why we find ourselves. But now, is it that the information is not readily available, or is it that the information that we have is not accurate?
No, we're living in an information age, actually. So information is really everywhere, okay? Obviously, you need to filter out because there's a lot of misinformation out there also. But with the internet, the advent of the internet, I mean, people can't really say that they don't know what's going on. I learned a lot of what I know from the internet and obviously other sources, many books that I read and so forth. But if people don't actually have information, it's not because it's not available. It's because they're really ignoring it. So people are really living in a state of ignorance. To quote Mark Passio, who is a priest in the Church of Satan. I mean, I learned a lot from that guy also. He doesn't call it ignorance. He says it's ignorance. People are willfully ignoring the information. Nescience means that you don't know anything because there's no information, so you can't know it because the information is not available. But when the information is available and you're ignoring it, then you're basically being ignorant. And that is the big problem.
True. He also mentioned the cost crisis, that, of course, financially people don't always have or can afford to have access to medication. Yes, look, a World Economic Forum study in 2011, said that it's going to cost the world's population over the next 20 years, from 2011, and we're in that period now, it's going to cost us $47 trillion on our healthcare spend. So that's a lot of money to be spending on healthcare. Imagine if everybody was healthy, what else we could use that money on, And that money would be spent on the 5 leading causes of chronic diseases, which is cardiovascular, cancer, diabetes, chronic respiratory disease, and so forth. And in fact, the World Health Organization said that 100 million people, are pushed into poverty, each year by their medical bills. I mean, that's 100 million people. In America, 60% of families apparently go bankrupt because of their medical bills. But people don't only, and in South Africa, I'm sure it's the same. I don't know what the percentage is here. But people don't only go bankrupt because they can't afford, health care. They actually also die. That's a tragedy, basically. And in fact, Margaret Chan, who's the Director General of the World Health Organization, said, no one in need of healthcare should really have to risk financial ruin as a result. But that's actually what's happening. And how do you stop this? I've developed a whole model, to try and deal with this issue. But because people are living in a certain paradigm, they have certain belief systems regarding healthcare. This model that I've been trying to bring, to the world is it's taking a bit of time, which is not surprising given how the mind works basically. So in South Africa, I mean, the Minister of Finance in 2014 said that 492 billion will be spent on healthcare over the next 3 years from 2014. So we in that period still, I think, as the country basically prepares for the National Health Insurance Scheme. A lot of the money in the private sector spent on hospitals. I mean, the Council for Medical Schemes said 124 billion was spent. I think 2014-2015 report said 124 billion rand was spent, by the medical aids on their members, healthcare, and about 47 billion, I think, was paid mainly to private hospitals. A small percentage went to public hospitals, but most of it goes to private hospitals. And in fact, private hospitals in South Africa, hospital costs in this country ranks amongst the highest in the OECD countries. So our healthcare is expensive in this country, extremely expensive. Yeah. You are listening to Radio 786 and 100.4 FM. Dr. Faiez, Kirsten in studio with me this morning. We're talking about the global health crisis, and we have discussed thus far the fact that there is not lack of information. There is information readily available, but unfortunately many of us are ignorant to this. And then, of course, the cost crisis when it does come to global health crisis. And then, of course, we mentioned cancer, but there's also the chronic disease crisis, where you find there's every time I hear there's something new. Not something new, but there's something that is deadly, and it doesn't seem to stop.
In fact, in that complaint that was brought before the International Criminal Court in The Hague, a tribunal was set up. The pharmaceutical companies were accused of willfully maintaining disease and actually creating disease, okay? Expanding existing disease, creating new diseases. And it seems to be the case that is the case. You're getting, Ebola and SARS and AIDS. Every time you look, you see there's something new on the horizon. It's... something obviously is happening, and something is happening. And it seems, but it seems that part of the agenda is actually to make humanity sick. And part of, we spoke about, I think last week we also spoke about the satanic beliefs that people hold. And one of them is eugenics, which is really a depopulation part of the agenda, is to depopulate the planet by a significant percentage. And they use various means. One of it is genetic manipulation. So they're modifying food, genetically modified foods. They use other selective breeding techniques and, reducing fertility rates and so forth. And so the whole idea is to keep people sick, and they've done an excellent job of it, because if more than 95% of people are, have one medical condition at least, then that's an excellent, result for people who want to achieve that result. So that's the problem, yeah.
And then the access to medical services, I think we kind of touched on this, and that it's only open to certain people.
Yeah, if people can't afford private healthcare, they just can't afford it, and they just go to the public service, which in governments really oftentimes don't have enough money, not only in this country, but many countries around the world, to provide the necessary services for their people in the public sector. And so those services are not, you can't really compare them oftentimes with the private sector. And so people just don't get the best that they could be getting. And sometimes people just can't even get to see a doctor or go to a hospital because they live in a rural area perhaps, and they just can't get to those hospitals or those clinics because they're just too far away, or those clinics just don't provide the services and so forth. So it's a massive problem around the world. I mean, we've been on this planet for how long now? And to be sitting in this situation after, I don't know, how many billion years, it's a sad reflection on humanity, quite honestly, yeah.
True. But on that note, I think it's important also to just try and look at the actual medical services that you find at the state hospitals, like your day hospitals, and I think it's really pathetic.
Yeah, it's
that's
very
another
sad, very sad,
but it affects the everyday person.
It does. I mean, maybe people will be better off if they close those services down, quite honestly, and people start, taking responsibility for their own health. I think they'll be better off, quite honestly. I'm just saying this off the top of my head, but what I know about prevention and reversal of disease, that's very possible. That's what my institute's about, is to help edu-power people, to provide edu-powerment programs. It's not only to deal with the medical problem. That's part of the solution, is really to provide edu-powerment programs. Or to merge, actually the mission of the Institute is to merge medicine with health and wellness empowerment. So we deal with the medical problems from a root cause perspective. In other words, we find the cause of the person's problem, don't just give them medication or treat them without knowing what's causing the problem. But then also I've written these programs which actually empower people, helps to reprogram themselves, and teaches them how to reverse and to prevent disease, because that is really the key. And if government's spending so much money on the NHI and they're not going to deal with the problem at the root cause level, then really it's almost like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic while it's sinking. If that's the case, that's basically what's going to be happening.
The global health crisis is what we are discussing this morning. Dr. Faiez in studio with me, and our lines open 0216991786. We have a caller. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, Zainabeen.
Wa alaikum
Salam
salam.
to the doctor.
Alaikum salam.
I just want to add to the discussion, doctor, if you allow me. But first, let me thank our Rabb for this time and space, alhamdulillah. I just want to add to the discussion, about this globalist. Many, many, many years ago, I think I was in my teens, I was exposed to a book called Practicals of the Elders of Zion. Now it's the Zionists or whatever. I don't know what one to name them, brand them, but I think they are part of the globalist agenda. In one of the protocols, it said, "We shall create a scarcity in agriculture in order to lift up the prices." That's one of the protocols. There are many other protocols that is actually taking place now, where wars are being created, and people are being because of the overpopulation and all that is the excuse they give. They can't feed the people anymore. Nowadays, it's about the water. The city council is supposed to look where the leaks are in the pipes, where the pipes are. You must remember the pipes are very, very old, underground, and a lot of those pipes are leaking. Instead of blaming the city council for non-servicing, the city council are blaming us now for using too much water. But be that as it may, that's another issue. You're coming to this global agenda, Doctor, if we say we've got everything. We say if we live like this, it will be fine. If we do this, it will be fine. But we do not realize that how we, as a faith-based community, in fact, all faith-based communities are being subservient to those people that have agendas. That's why our creativity and our individuality are being suppressed via the education system, via the economic system. All this are being suppressed because of the economic system of this globalist people. Now, what I'm trying to say, Doctor, I hope this program is going to continue. It doesn't end there. We had a wonderful program during the night with Sadiq Rayloon. His topic was on the same basis as what you are talking about. And this, we must open it up to the community that is unaware. How do we do that, Doctor? How can we do that? The first thing is that I believe is that we must go back to our roots of our deen. And what is the roots of our deen? And that's the Quran. Because everything is there, what we need, our social life, our economic system, everything is there. But no, we have been sucked into this whole system of secularism where we just play ball. I hope, Doctor, that this program of yours they've chose you now to highlight the issues that is affecting us, especially the issues of economic circumstances, where our money is being controlled. Number one, our rand is worthless now against the dollar and the euro, and the pound. But our rand all over the world, what they've done, they have taken the bargaining system out of the equation, where we as South Africans have got gold, we've got so many minerals, we can bargain like that, but we can't bargain because we have adopted the globalist system of economics. And this is what we must highlight to the community, because our community, they are sincere, they are faith-based people, they want to live happily, but some of them, they can't. You get children now that, they got married now, and then next month, 2 months down the line, they are divorced because of the system that we're living in. And I wish that we can highlight this to the community, because there is definite agendas. Food, they make food a scarcity. Now they're making eggs a scarcity, and then the prices goes up. Everything, I was in Durban many, many years ago, and there was a shortage of butter. And the butter, there was a shipload of butter that was going to the east, to another country. But we exported that butter. But we, as citizens of the country, are being denied the access by being told there's a shortage of that, there's a shortage of that, and it's all about money, Doctor. Shukran, Doctor, they like to listen to you. You keep going.
Afwan, shukran, brother. Appreciate that. Yeah. Oh, the brothers covered many issues here, which is excellent. Shukran for that. Where do I start? I think you mentioned the protocols of Zion. I sort of read it, but they say it's a fraud. But when you look at the protocols and you see what's happening in the world today, then you wonder if it really is a fraud. It sort of matches exactly what's happening in the world today. So those who are saying it's a fraud, that's what they say. But common sense tells you, if you look at what it says in the protocols and you look at what's happening in the world, then you ask yourself, is it a fraud or not? But anyway, if you look at inflation, for example. I used to buy a smoothie last year. It used to cost me for a large one 38 Rand. Bought one the other day. It's cost 59 Rand. It's the same smoothie, So how does it, who's manipulating the value of the money, that's causing, things to become so expensive and out of the reach of many people that they actually starve and die of, hunger. Geoengineering is another issue we should be dealing with, weather manipulation. People don't believe the fact that, weather is being manipulated. You look at these hurricanes, in the Caribbean, people say, no, that's just nature. But if you go to a site called, I don't know what's his site's name, but the guy's name is Dane Wigington. He's a geoengineering, specialist, and he's got enough ample proof, to show that the weather's being manipulated through chemtrails and other means. There's also, I forget the name. There's a video, which it's a very, very funny title. It says "Must See." This video has been blocked in almost all countries. What's happening? But the woman speaking in that video, she gives a very beautiful, clear, concrete outline as to what is happening with chemtrails and how it's affecting, people and everything else on the planet. In fact, rickets, which is a disease of deficiency of vitamin D and calcium and so forth, phosphate, is going up in the United States because the sun is being blocked out by these chemtrails, and you need sunshine, to form vitamin D. So rickets, the incidence of rickets is rising in the United States. That's how insane the world has become. The suppression of individuality, like the brother says, which this is all part of the agenda. It's a collectivist agenda. It's to get everybody herded into one country. So the whole world will be one country controlled by one government.
Sure.
And that's collectivism. That's communism, really. And we know what communism has done in countries around the world. It kills hundreds of millions of people. So once you're all herded into under one sort of government with one military, then it's easy to take people out like fish in a barrel, basically. And that's basically where we're heading. And it sort of pains me in many ways to see people so fast asleep, while the bootstrap or the boot is basically being pressed on their face, and harder and harder every day. But they sort of enjoying their TV and bread and circuses, as they say. So what can I do? I can just say a few words, here and there, but ultimately it all depends on people's how awake they are, and the way I see it now, they're not really that awake. So that is the big problem. It's about the Novus Ordo Seclorum agenda, like the brother says. Secularism, worship money. Money is really the god of the world, quite honestly. That is why we are where we are today, because we're really worshipping money. We worship other things also. We worship government, we worship our corporations, we worship our sporting bodies and institutions. But the main god really is money. That's the main god, because it's part of the agenda, is to make people depend so on money that they actually start to worship it. It becomes, the priority in their lives, basically.
We have a caller. Assalamu alaikum. You're on Radio 786.
Salam to you, lady, and salam to your guests. I would just want to pose a question. We as peoples, mostly speaking about the so-called third world country and suffering masses, are we just supposed to let this continue, especially as we as Muslims? Aren't we being told that we are there to help the people suffering, what have you? So it astounds me. I'm hardly educated, but I notice these kinds of things. It's not only in South Africa. As a young man, I've been many places of work here, and I've seen many situations which is similar in South Africa and United States and many other so-called enlightened rich countries. But I'm speaking especially about the Muslims. Aren't we there to try and solve these kinds of problems and just accept it? And even, please, sir, I'm not there. I'm speaking especially to our learned people, including our religious leaders. Aren't we there to discuss this and to try and get some solution to this? And I think we as Muslims especially, we can find a solution, and we got to cause ease the suffering, especially of the Rohingya and many other places where these people are. Now, who is the main culprit? And don't be afraid to say it. It's mostly the white races, and mostly so-called Christians. I don't want to slant any, but they in the forefront against Islam, who is there to try but my point is this: we speak about this, practically everybody knows what it is, but we don't do nothing about it. So what are we going to do? I think it's in this special approach in this time. We've got Korea, which is in problem with these devils, the tank forces. Iran, they mentioning Iran, Muslim countries. Can't we get together and discuss them? The first thing we're going to do, not going to have trade with them anymore. Get them out, their embassies out of their countries. We do business with people who are facing similar attacks from these people because it's a madman that is controlling the world. He's in control of nuclear power, can cause havoc on earth. But we're just speaking amongst ourselves on a small scale. When are we going to start to wake? When people are being killed by the millions? So this is a question I want to... Are we just supposed to have these kinds of things? And we suppose if the things are supposed to make some effort to try and stem this flow of evils that's confronting old men or the younger generation.
Shukran wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's Radio 786, so we're talking about the global health crisis. Dr. Faiez, Kirsten in studio with me, 0216991 or 0786101112. Before you comment on that, Doctor, there's a very interesting comment here that says, Dr. Kirsten is a classical example of the adage that there is no substitute for intelligence. Our educational system at secondary school level sadly does not instill an ability to think critically and analyze complex problems. Some of those who are fortunate to attend university will be fortunate to acquire the skill. For those who lack this ability, they will always require someone to explain the global conspiracy at any cost. If only we could insist that our local imams be imbued with a similar insight to give context to Islamic teachings.
Shukran for that. I remember Johan Joubert, who was very at the forefront many years ago of the common law, natural law movement. He said the best thing is to avoid the educated nitwits. So many people going to university, I don't really think, because you've come through a schooling system which doesn't encourage critical thinking, your imagination is destroyed. And then you go to university and, you get more of the same, and you come out on the other end thinking that what you learnt is actually the absolute truth. Mm-hmm. I discovered early on, I'm not in medical school, I thought I was learning the truth in medical school, quite honestly, but when I went to the business school, I was older in years, and I started, I started learning finance and economics. I was like astounded. I said, do people actually believe this stuff? They were teaching it, and the professors were talking as if it's the whole truth and nothing but the truth. But to my mind, it was like, no, that makes no sense to me at all. But this is what they teach, and if you don't use your critical thinking skills, your faculties, which is the first principle of natural law, is mentalism, that's the first principle. And you're told in the Quran to think about your life and your world around you critically.
We have one more caller, Dr. Kirsten. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
I'd like to commend...
before you continue, do you mind please turning down your radio, the volume of your radio?
Okay, sure. Yes, I'd like to commend the doctor. And, although the media throughout the world would like to downplay this and, say that it's theories, the same thing with this drug problem in the Western Cape. They can get the army for the next 10 years and the problem won't be sorted out. Because I believe that there's a third force involved. The old system of divide and rule. If you look at South America, the drug problem there, it's the easiest way to control people if people are fighting each other. So you must, bring the army also. It's not going to work.
Okay, I think we get the most of what the caller was trying to bring across, Dr. Kirsten.
Yeah, look, we fight amongst each other because we're not thinking, we're not reading the instruction manual. We're not living according to natural law, which is God's law, God's natural law, God's instruction. Our consciousness is very low. And the way to control people is really to divide and rule, to divide them and let them fight amongst themselves, which is happening today. We see Shia fighting Sunni and vice versa, Christian fighting Muslim, Buddhist fighting Muslim, Hindu fighting whoever, all fighting with each other. But the enemy that's creating all this animosity between themselves is sitting back and laughing at them every day and disempowering them financially and in many other ways. And so it's about leadership ultimately, which is a difficult task, to be given if you're in a leadership position. And I would rather avoid that position because it's such a highly responsible position. So at the end of the day, the leaders may think they're leading, but ultimately they are misleading, oftentimes unintentionally, but oftentimes out of lack of knowledge and information and ability to think critically. They start misleading masses of people to destruction, and that's happened throughout history. And so if a person is in a leadership position and they're part of the problem, then they should think about getting out of there. But it ultimately depends on self-leadership. People need to start leading themselves, in an effective way. And the best thing you can do, the best form of resistance, in a satanic world, I think, to my mind, is really just to live in harmony with God's natural law, basically. If you do that, and the main principle, if everything is just confusing to you, the politics, health, everything, education, all confusing, then just live your life by one simple rule. Do no harm to any sentient being, to the planet and to the people and to the animals. Simply what it means is don't steal anything. Don't steal life, don't steal rights, and don't steal freedom. But we're living according to man's law, and that is the huge problem. Because the word jurisdiction, what does it mean? The word juris means law, and the word diction means to speak or to dictate. So the word jurisdiction means to dictate the law. So who's dictating the law? This was dictated to many hundreds of years ago, even thousands of years ago, by a certain group of people to advantage themselves, to benefit themselves. And we're living our lives, today by that law which was dictated by man. But we know the universe and the laws of the universe was created by God. God dictated the creation of the universe and the laws that govern our behavior, our consciousness, and the physical laws that govern the universe, thermodynamics and so forth, because God said, He said, be and it is. So God said, be and it is. He dictated, what it should be. But we came along with our satanic minds and we said we're going to dictate the law. And everybody else is now following that law which man dictated.
We are due for a break, but we also have a caller holding. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you and your honorable guest.
Wa alaikum salam.
In fact, I would like to add what some of the callers have said, and what your guest has said as well. In fact, Allah makes it very clear, Allah will not change the condition of the people unless they're willing to change themselves. If you give someone a 10 rand in his hand, and you tell him you've got a choice to buy a packet of cigarettes and to buy a bread, who do you blame? Allah or shaitan or yourself? Now, people always like to look at the scapegoat, and this so-called scapegoat is called shaitan. Little do they realize it's a shaitan from within themselves that they must fight. As long as people have got no ethics and morality and principles and try to uphold truth, they're going to suffer these consequences. Like the previous caller said, they can bring all the military in the world to try to restore law and order. If the people within them are addicts, unfortunately, nothing will happen. It will just be temporary. It's like putting a plaster on a cut. So what I'm trying to say is, we all talk about the Quran, but the biggest enemies of Islam are the Muslims themselves. Let's take example Iran. Iran trying to be an independent country, but its biggest enemies are who? The so-called Arabs, the so-called Muslims. So why can't they wake up? They know Arabic. They sit with the Quran. So we must stop blame the Zionists and blaming this. The Muslims have got all the wealth. They've got a lot of political power. They have a lot of independent countries, but they don't have unity. They don't understand the Quran because they read the Quran according to fantasies. They don't read the Quran according to reality. Once the Muslim will wake up to reality, then they will come right. But as long as they remain in a dream world, unfortunately, they're going to suffer the consequences.
Shukran wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Before we do anything else, let's first take that short break, inshallah, and after the break we continue. We're talking about the global health crisis with Dr. Faiez Kirsten. After the break we continue. Our lines open 0216991786. Stay tuned. It is 10 to 10 on Radio 786. We have a caller holding and quite a few WhatsApp messages that came via 0786 10 11 12. And so let's straight go to the caller. Okay, let's see the messages that we received via WhatsApp. One of it reads, Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Faiez, shukran so much for enlightening us with your presence and also with your insight. The drug lord murderers are children trafficking. Oh, okay, no, that's nothing to do with our discussion. Rather, this one says, as long as government success is only measured in GBT growths, which only enriched a few, and says nothing about the economic improvement for the broad public, and which is definitely not a measurement for a happy and fulfilling life which we all seek, nothing will change. Good government should not be slave to the economic dictatorship, but rather be concerned about the well-being of our citizens.
Yes, no, I agree. I don't agree with government, though. The idea of government, because it's not really possible if you analyze what government is. It's not a possibility. But because we live in a world of deception and people are mind controlled, unfortunately. In fact, the word government means to control the mind. So they believe that a government is actually a possibility, and it happens obviously in every country. But be that as it may, that's, the reality is government is not possible. And anybody who can prove it to me, I'd love to have a discussion with them. I think the brother hit the nail on the head when he said, Allah will not change the condition of a people unless they change that which is within themselves. That is really the crux of the matter. Your outer world that you're experiencing, that you're seeing, whether it's your physical health or the environment you live in or the world at large, is a reflection of your inner self. And people's thinking is dysfunctional. Their belief systems are delusional, which is false. And so their behavior is basically dysfunctional. And that's the real problem. The inner is basically not well, and so the outer is actually not well. And in fact, morality plays a huge role, like the brother mentioned, ethics and morality. In fact, the more moral a society is, the more free the society is. There's direct correlation between freedom and morality. And the more immoral a society is, the more enslaved a society will be. And that's why the whole world is now becoming enslaved. In fact, America has been demoralized, which I mean their morals have been removed over a period of a few decades. And America is in a real state of serious immorality. And the lack of freedom there is actually massive. In fact, Arnold Rousseau produced a documentary called From Freedom to Fascism in America. So morality plays a huge role, and whose responsibility is it to be moral? Each individual person, okay? And that's where it really starts. Otherwise, we're really going to get nowhere. And we are getting nowhere. Things are getting worse, actually.
Now, Dr. Faiez, is it part of the global agenda to cull the human population World War III?
It seems to be part of the agenda, Obviously, the eugenics agenda has been rolling out for a long time now. And war is one of the methods to kill people off. They have a slow kill and a fast kill, hard kill and soft kill. There's different ways of killing people. Disease is a slow kill process, okay? And war is a quick kill process. So you kill thousands and hundreds of thousands, and oftentimes millions of people quickly, with bombs and weapons. I mean, that's quick you kill people. But people are dying right now as we speak, hundreds of millions of them, through disease. They're actually dying. In fact, a report that came out it was done in South Africa by the Chronic Diseases Research Unit, and I think the burden of disease in Africa. Anyway, 2 groups did a study, and they showed that the South Africans are getting fatter, they're getting sicker, and the problem is really bad in South Africa alone. So these are all strategies, to weaken the human population.
With about 2 minutes left before we conclude, Dr. Faiez, how do we remedy this? What do we do?
That's a good question. I've been thinking about for a long time, and it makes me sad every day because it looks like I'm completely ineffective. I think, as I said, go back to God's law, natural law. Live in harmony with natural law. That's really the best thing to do to resist. The satanic world that we're living in. Is you yourself do no harm to yourself first of all, and then to other sentient beings on the planet. If everybody respects that law and lives their lives by that law, don't steal from yourself in terms of smoking or eating junk food. Don't, steal anybody else's rights. Because the system you're living in, this corporate statutory system, is not about rights. It's about privileges. And your privileges can be taken away from you at any time. So you don't have any rights in the system. Although deceptively they say we have a Bill of Rights, which is, I still want somebody to prove to me that is the case. And don't take away your own freedom and anybody else's freedom by your behavior. Look at yourself, start with yourself, change your inner self, and the outer world will change if you do it collectively in a good way. Yeah.
I think I'm going to just latch on to what one of the callers mentioned, that Allah only changes the condition of people until they change what is within themselves first. So that starts with me and you. It starts with us.
Absolutely. 100% true.
So on that note, to you, Dr. Faiez, shukran so much for your time, and once again for your insights. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. And
Allah, shukran.
Last message that just came through, please do not forget to leave brother Dr. Faiz's contact details. I'd really like to get in touch with him.
078-416-2673. 078-416-2673 is best to SMS me and I'll call you back. And then Faiez, F-A-R-E-Z at brainscience.co.za. Faiez at brainscience.co.za. Shukran.
And then last message, if every father and mother starts getting their house in order within their homes, things will change. And we say thanks to all those who contributed to this discussion this morning. We talked about the global health crisis with Dr. Faiez Kirsten. Stay tuned to Radio 786 and 100.4 FM. The news follows shortly.